Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, transfer rumour mill time. It's been a little while, but there's actually been so many names that have sort of been bandied about over the past
Yeah,
few weeks, and we thought we would sort of cherry pick some of the best and most interesting names, rumours, links, and put them in this video for you guys. But before we get into that, mate, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I am good. It's that time of year, isn't it? We are midway through April, believe it or not. The season will be coming to an end in May. So slowly but surely, the rumour mill is chugging into action. The rumours are flowing. There's the good, the bad, and the outright ridiculous. And as always, the Villa Filler podcast will be your best place to stay on top of the ball. It's what we live for, mate. It's our bread and butter. Once the football stops, that's when the Villa Filler comes alive. As soon as transfer season kicks in, we go up a gear.
You're not wrong, man. You're not wrong. And there's some exciting names. There's some names you've probably heard spoken about over the past few days. And, you know, there's some names in here that you may not have heard of. So we've got three players for you. We're going to start off with the most interesting one, I think, and that's Kalvin Phillips. It's reported by on the BBC Sports transfer blog that Villa were reportedly interested in Kalvin Phillips. And immediately, everybody went, no, not happening, injury prone, this, that, da, da, da. And I get it, right? Because listen, Kalvin Phillips has only played 6 times this season for his club, Manchester City, 6 appearances. And I think that totals to just over 110 minutes, right? Which is not a lot of football whatsoever. Don't get me wrong. He's been riddled with his knee injuries. I think it's a knee injury. Since he signed with Manchester City and sort of towards the back end of his time at Leeds. Didn't really feature a lot towards the end of last season, did he, Dan? So he's not played a lot of football. However, there is no doubt in anyone's mind, Kalvin Phillips is an absolutely phenomenal footballer. And I think England got a lot of, I think, Bryce during the Euros got so much of the credit for how well he was, and Bellingham when he played as well. Kalvin Phillips is what really made England's midfield function, in my opinion. Operates so well in the pivot, and which should he have a clean bill of health, this would be an absolute no-brainer.
Yes, mate. You're right to say that England is where he shines because he was the men's player of the year, wasn't he? In 2020, 2021, which included that run to the final of the Euros. So as you rightly say, Declan Rice got a lot of the plaudits, and you think of all the guys that were pivotal to that run to the final, your Harry Kanes, even your Harry Maguires, players like that. It was Kalvin Phillips who took the award. Q, as is par for the course for good English players nowadays, a big money move to Manchester City just 12 months ago at 45 million. And that fee is, in my opinion, where you come across roadblock number one with this deal is that I think, given that deal happened on like 12 months ago by the time the summer rolls around, 10 months ago now, City will want, if you're going to buy them out right now, if it's not going to be a loan, most of that fee back, if not all of it. I can't see them siphoning off 20 million on this guy already, despite the amount of minutes that he's played or the lack of minutes that he's played. Pep Guardiola continues to insist that he's needed around the place as backup for Rodri. But let's play a game, mate. Let's play a game here on the Villa Filler podcast. So you mentioned how many minutes was it?
Roughly,
he played
112.
112. Let's play a game. So honestly, Dan's done you guys listening a favour because I wasn't going to give you that frame within which to work. I was just going to say, how many minutes of Premier League football has Kalvin Phillips played this season? It was going to be an open-ended question, but Dan's given you that figure just over 100 now. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. Close your eyes, listeners. Think of a number between that and 0. Have you got it? 56. 56 minutes of Premier League football That is it. Just over 1.5. He's made just 2 starts for City against Bristol City and against Southampton in cup competitions. I did not realise it was that dire. The saving grace is that he still continues to get called up to the England squad. He's missed months of action, as you say, with knee injuries of all sorts. I believe the latest was a shoulder injury. But for me, mate, I look at the money that he's going to be on. And, he's not going to want to lose out on all that cash so early into his deal. I imagine he's got a contract that financially he'd very much like to see out. But it is that fee, mate. 45 million. City will want a lot of that back. That would shatter our existing Premier League transfer record, which is something I can see us doing this summer. I think it's almost inevitable that we will, actually. It currently sits with the Emi Buendia deal at 33 million, or a reported 33 million. But I think the money that he's on and the money that City would want would point towards, I think if anyone gets Kalvin Phillips this summer, I think it might be a loan first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would be opposed to that. He's actually on £150,000 a week reportedly, mate. So you're right, that would put him ahead of Luca Dean, who is the club's top earner at roughly around £134,000. There's been talk recently about giving Ollie a bumper new contract to make him one of the highest paid players at the club, with that fee rumoured to be £100,000 per week. So we're talking some serious dough here. And as you say, mate, that's more than a roadblock. That's like a full-on closure, diversion. Like you're gonna have to go sign another player. It's interesting because, like, listen, 112 minutes. Like, you can't. Some people, rightfully so, won't be able to move past that. We signed Tyrone Mings, somebody who is a player who was riddled with injuries, had seemingly not played more than like 100 games of football when we signed him. And, knock on wood, since he's come to Villa, he's had a fantastic bill of health. So maybe, I mean, we have so many players out on the injury table right now, don't we? With the likes of Coutinho, Matty Cash, Leon Bailey. These are all players who've come to the club with previously good bills of health that have declined since they've joined. Maybe we're good at signing injury-prone players and keeping them fit. Maybe that's the thinking here, right? Because he's wonderful. As much as it pains me to say it, with him being a Leeds boy and everything that sort of happened in our time in the Championship, over the past year when he has played, he's averaged 3.87 tackles per 90, puts him in the top 1 percentile of all midfielders in the world there. He's averaging 1.52 interceptions per 90, 1.93 blocks per 90, and 1.52 clearances per 90. He gets stuck in, man. He gets stuck in. He's all action. And, I think we've kind of looked at the squad and thankfully recently, players have stepped up, mate, and we've been able to go, do you know what? McGinn has played really well in this position and Dougie's really stepped up while Boubacar's been out. But how nice would it be in this situation to turn to a Kalvin Phillips to play in that pivot with Douglas Luiz? Because, again, depth is something that we lack, and Phillips, arguably, when he's fit, is just as good, if not better, than Boubacar Kamara. Guys, don't, lose your mind over that. I don't think that's that controversial to say. You guys know how highly I rate Bouba. This is how highly I rate Kalvin Phillips. And it would certainly be an interesting one, mate, should this happen. But as you say, with the fee, with the wages, and we can joke about the sort of signing injured players and whatnot, but right now it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, totally agree, mate. And I think we could move from one player on significantly high wages to another one.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we've got a free agent coming up, right? Which is obviously going to be the sort of the silver lining when you sort of look to the high wages. That is Roberto Firmino. He's a player who Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool have pulled aside within recent months and said, listen, you're surplus to requirements. We're not going to be renewing your contract. And I wonder if they might be regretting that after the equaliser they scored against Arsenal the other day. What a game that was. Mm-hmm. But Roberto Firmino is a player that we've spoken about a few times on the podcast, just sort of off the cuff. And I think it first started, I think it was Tony Cascarino on TalkSport said when
Yes.
Gerrard was in charge, he was like, "Do you know what? They should sign him." And I think at the time it was just it was the Liverpool connection. Obviously, the contract was running down as well. And, you know, I'd have had Roberto Firmino and Steven Gerrard, but I'd absolutely take Roberto Firmino under Unai Emery because he would operate in that Emi Buendia role, but obviously at a completely different level. We know what Roberto Firmino is capable of. And of course, 31 years old, I believe, obviously, he's sort of probably looking at his last sort of big move before he maybe goes to MLS or returns to Brazil or what, you know, for his final paycheck. That, you know, he's still got one big move in him before this big paycheck that he will have on his horizon. I think he would be the perfect foil for Ollie Watkins, mate. I really, you know, this is. It was reported by Ekram Konor, sorry, butchered the pronunciation. He's another one of them sort of Fabrizio Romano wannabes that has kind of popped up out of nowhere. Not a lot of what he reports ever has much credence to it, but we wanted to speak about it purely because this is the kind of player that we should be profiling, in my opinion, mate. I think he would be the perfect foil to Ollie Watkins.
Yes, yeah, I agree, mate. I'm a big Bobby Firmino aficionado. Love what he brings to the table. 359 appearances for Liverpool since joining in 2015, 109 goals, and that's not a bad record for someone who's never really been an out-and-out number nine. He's sort of come to define, I think, the role of the false nine in world football. He's been a part of maybe the Premier League's greatest ever attacking trident. You know, that Salah, Firmino, Mane front three will go down in the halls of Premier League history for a long, long time, and rightly so, because I don't think we've ever really seen anything like that, to be honest with you. My only worry is this, on a personal one, is that I didn't know if after achieving those heights, and look, you know, he's got a list of honours as long as your arm, you know, Premier Leagues, Champions Leagues, you name it. He's gone on the international stage as well during his time with Liverpool. You know, he won the Copa America out there as well. I just wonder if, you know, we know Barcelona love snapping up free agents in clubs like this. If a move to La Liga, something that's a little bit kinder on the knees, you know, as you say, if he wants that move to MLS or back to Brazil, I didn't know if, I think he's earned himself a seat at the very, very top table. And I think if a club like Barcelona or Real Madrid went, hey, do you want to come back backup to Robert Lewandowski or Karim Benzema after 2 years, and then we'll pop you off to into Miami, I think he'd go, yes, thank you very much. I don't know if there's just a part of me that goes, I think Liverpool would be, like, not that they would have a say in it, obviously, because you say it's a free transfer, but to go to another Premier League, can we say rival? Give him the table.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
this is where we're at. Like, we're above them in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows if the season will end that way? But you know that you can't deny that's the way it sits right now. To go to another Premier League club, and one that's going to be, you know, trying to operate in and around Europe as well. I didn't know if he'd personally fancy a triple board, but you're right in that I'd love him. I think Ollie is someone that, you know, holds the ball up very well, but we've seen in this run of goals that he's so good when he's on the shoulder, and he's a real throwback number 9 in that regard. And I think having someone that, as you say, can drop a little bit deeper and link the midfield and attack really nicely would be a lot of fun. So whilst I would love to see it, I just depends what Bobby wants.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, man. Like, he's achieved so much, and there's so much sort of emotion and sentiment tied up in England with Liverpool specifically for him. And, you know, at his age, again, 31 years old, is he ready for a new challenge in a new country? Possibly. I think, you know, the one thing that you probably shouldn't overlook with Liverpool is how, you know, it's probably the case with all clubs, but I think more so Liverpool, is the amount of sort of energy and emotion it sort of requires to play for that club, and the sort of the weight that them players carry on their shoulders because of what that club means to the community and so many people. It's not the same as, you know, with no disrespect, rocking up and playing for Brentford every week. there are different levels of expectations, and you know, I guess there's a level of empathy maybe, that these players sort of either have or develop when they play for a club like Liverpool. Um, and I mean, I was surprised, mate, when I was doing some brief research for this podcast. 9 goals and 4 assists so far this season in the Premier League. Made 22 appearances. Not all of them have been starts, however. But he's someone who, Liverpool are sort of in a transitional time, right? With Nunez, Gakpo, obviously Mane left in the summer, and has been scrapping bloody Sane, as it seems. He's not had as many minutes as he would have probably hoped for or expected, but the return is absolutely magnificent, mate. And all from an XG of 4.7, 9 goals from 4.7 XG. Just goes to show this guy is the creme de la creme. And like what I think, the attributes that he has, the sort of his ability on the ball, he's such a selfless player. He plays for the team, and I think that's kind of shown in the sort of the records and statistics that you look at Mane and Salah and they've broken during that sort of dynasty. Firmino is obviously the least talked about player in that trio, and it shouldn't necessarily be that way. Over the past year, he has attempted 40.9 passes per 90, which puts him within the top 2 percentile of forwards. He's averaging 5.91 progressive passes per 90 as well. Again, puts him within the top 2 percentile, respectively, of forwards there. Around an 80% pass completion rate, so solid, what you'd expect. But he leads from the front, mate, averaging 1.44 tackles per 90, 0.72 tackles per 90, and 1.23 blocks per 90, which puts him respectively in the top 3 and 1 percentile for all of those stats. That's everything you want. That's everything we're seeing from Emi Buendia, but on a higher level. And he's just doing it more. And when you look at the players that FBref compare him to, a lot of people will go, not as many goals, like not as many, all this kind of stuff. But, the list of the sort of 10 similar players, Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, criminally underrated forward for what he provides to the team. Gabriel Jesus, another one, doesn't necessarily get you 25 goals a season, but the overall team play, you can't put a price tag on that. Breel Mbolo, Alexis Sanchez, Lautaro Martinez, Alexandre Lacazette, these are all selfless players that lead from the front and ultimately influence the game with their style of play. And it's for all the reasons I've just listed, that's why I want Roberto Firmino to come to the Villa, mate.
Yep, no, for sure, mate. I'd say then I would say against him. I think selfless is definitely the right word, pal.
Absolutely, man, selfless. And I mean, the third and final player, this is a really interesting one because, we've spoke about two established players, established names, Premier League, Champions League experience on the biggest stage. And now we're taking a complete 180 and we're going to talk about Feyenoord's Mexican striker, Santiago Gimenez. Interestingly, mate, he's managed in 42 appearances this season for 2 clubs. I believe it's 21 goals and 3 assists. Now, he only recently sort of moved to Europe in the past year. 5 of them games are from his time in Mexico with, I believe, is it Cruz Azul?
Yes,
Yeah, thankfully my notes didn't let me down there. They just took a little while to load. And has sort of earned a move to continental Europe and has been tearing it up for Feyenoord. Had a bit of a quiet night tonight against AS Roma. It's not the type of performance that you would watch and be like, we need to sign this guy after the 90 minutes. But he's scoring goals for fun, and it's really interesting because I feel like we've already made this transfer, right, with John Duran in the January. We've gone and signed a hot young prospect. He's 21 years old from Southern America, obviously North America. He's Mexican, unproven, fantastic sort of stats when you look at them and sort of scratch below the surface. It's I don't know. Like this doesn't really make too much sense, but it kind of has me excited at the same time as well, mate. With this sort of Latin contingency that we seem to have at the club and that we're building towards.
Yeah, yeah, it's always very exciting, mate. 21 years old, one of the big rising stars right now in the Eredivisie. A critical reason between, as you rightly say, finals, really impressive run to the top of the league. They've got an 8-point gap up there in first spot as they hunt down a 16th club Eredivisie title, 8-5 in the Europa League, 10 goals, 4 assists in 20 Eredivisie games, 3-4 in Dutch Cup competitions. When you put it all like that, mate, it sounds pretty good. And we're not the only club to think that. You only have to search his name into Twitter, Google, whatever you want, and it's like a who's who of Europe's elite are said to be looking at this guy. Interestingly, I was doing some digging into his stats, mate, and he's only the second player in Feyenoord's history to score in 6 consecutive away games in the league. Does that remind you of anyone? Apparently, this is what we're hunting down now.
Wow.
Players could do it on the road. The Villa won them, so he has that in common with Ollie Watkins this season. He's a, despite what these numbers may suggest, they do all sound great. He's not quite the finished article yet. He has a sort of bull in the china shop approach to football. He's very sort of like big pressing forward and stuff like that. He's a very traditional number 9 as well. Does his business in the box. But, you know, you look a little bit into those kind of expected numbers. Just looking at FootMob, shows that he's missed 12 big chances in the league this season alone. That's the 4th highest in the competition. So, you know, he's showing traits of ultimately being 21 years old, but he can be excused from that. And you imagine over the next sort of 10, 15 years as his career evolves, he will iron those out. And the trajectory that he's on right now, he's exploded on the scene in Dutch football. And, you know, I don't think he's quite had that welcome to the league moment yet. I still think despite all of these numbers, he is something of an unknown quantity. But, you know, whilst he didn't necessarily impress in Feyenoord's game against Roma, they did still win. There's a chance that they'll progress to the next round of the Europa League. And who knows, with a big tie against, you know, you look at some of the names that got wins tonight, Juventus, Manchester United, a big goal against one of those guys in the next round for Feyenoord, who are, you know, the team coming out of Dutch football right now, could well put him on a stage to land a big summer move. So it's one where I think it is going to be coming. I think he'll be a name that's on the radar of a lot more, like a lot more. I think when you look at his kind of style of play, I saw links to Manchester United and stuff like that earlier, and I just don't see a 21-year-old. You know, you were talking of what it takes to play for Liverpool. To wear that number 9 shirt for Manchester United is arguably one of the biggest weights in world football. I don't think they're going to put that on a 21-year-old. And so I think there is an intermediary club needed. We talk about this a lot on the pod, mate, where like players, when you're playing for that kind of club, before you make the step to the top table of European football, there's usually a club, maybe 2 in between out of Dutch football. So I think that's necessary for him, but it's really exciting that we're linked with him.
It screams Brighton or Brentford, doesn't it, mate? It screams Brighton or Brentford. It's like that Undav transfer that Brighton made. It's speculative. It may or may not work. Undav hasn't really worked out, to be honest. But yeah, as you say, mate, the numbers aren't amazing. But, you know, when you sort of, I think, you know, this specific stat I'm about to give you, mate, I think tells you everything you need to know about him. He's averaging 7.20 touches in the attacking penalty area, puts him within the top 2 percentile of all players. All he wants to do is get between the sticks, have a shot on goal. And, you know, the other numbers aren't too impressive, though. He's scored 5 goals from an XG of 2.7 in the Europa League this season in 7 appearances. So interesting that you brought up the big chances missed statistic, mate. I guess it just kind of goes to show the character of him, really, that he's still going and he's still had such an impressive goal return in what is, you know, not a lot of games. Yeah, I don't necessarily think this is one for Villa. This was reported by in Football, but it's certainly an interesting one. It's one that we want to sort of put you guys on the radar because this is somebody who, if he isn't on your radar, probably should be, and may well be within the next sort of 12 to 18 months. So yeah, 3 exciting players. There's going to be so many more in the coming weeks and months, but don't you worry, Dan and I will have you covered. We absolutely love it, mate. We absolutely love transfer rumour mill season, and it's what keeps us interested over the summer when there isn't all that much to talk about. So guys, let us know your thoughts. Would you sign any of these players? And if so, how much would you sign them for? Let us know in the comment section down below. TikTok, Instagram is at Heart of the Holte, at Pods. Dan made a link to, so make sure you check that out in the top of the description. Please follow the Instagram. The Instagram needs some love. We'd appreciate if you guys would share it amongst, you, all your fellow Villa supporting friends, anyone else who listens to the podcast and wants more Villa filler. Follow Heart of the Holte on Instagram. Not Heart of the Holte, Villa Filler Pod. We don't have access to the Heart of the Holte Instagram. That's a pain. And yeah, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and up the Villa.